speaking on all of the spiritual principles, and each time I speak on a different one. And today I want to speak very important. It's the first one. It's what I call the Fatherhood of God, because we have this term that we use. A lot of us want to say, "Oh, I believe in God." Well, as spiritualists, what do we really believe in? It's important for us. We as spiritualists, we represent spiritualism to the communities that we live in. And so it's important for us to know just what do our principles say. And our first principle doesn't say, I believe in God. It says, I believe in infinite intelligence. Well, that's a little different than the God that I heard about when I was a little kid going to Sunday school and Bible school and all those things in my mother's fundamentalist church that she belonged to. And so I learned about a God he had a long gray beard and he sat up in a cloud somewhere. And when we first heard about him, we said, oh, you can get whatever you want from God. You just ask him, he'll give it to you. And so we saw this guy, this personality that we would then ask for things from, and maybe we get them. Wow. Well, that's not what we're talking about here in spiritualism. In spiritualism, we're talking about something different. We're talking about that creative life force that creates the entire universe. The International Federation of Spiritualism says it this way: we recognize the existence of a creative life force, the thing that grows. Now, if you study science, you may have heard that the sun's going to die out one day and the universe will slowly collapse and everything will go to nothingness. And that's called entropy. That's where energy disorganizes and it winds down and it wears out. That's entropy. But entropy is always working in opposition to the creative life force, the thing that makes a tree grow. You take a little seed and you put it in the ground and you get a tree, and the tree gets bigger and bigger and bigger and it grows. It's certainly not wearing out and going down, isn't it? It's coming up. If you've ever planted corn and watched it for 90 days, it comes up and then pretty soon you got corn on the cob and all that. That's the life force. That's the creative life force that comes up. Well, that's what we're worshiping. We're worshiping the life force rather than the destructive force of entropy, which is wearing things out. And that's something science doesn't want to really look at. Science looks at things they can see and feel and touch. The life force, what makes a blade of grass grow? Not one scientist in this world can make a blade of grass. They can get all the parts and pieces, all the chemicals, they can put them all there, but they can't put it together and make a blade of grass that grows, because that's outside their reality. Their reality doesn't include that life force that makes things grow. Recently in science, we've begun to call this consciousness. We see that the universe is conscious, that the universe is the basic building block of the universe is information. And information is consciousness. If you have a lot of information, you're conscious of a lot of things. And we see that the universe is built on consciousness. It's the smallest particle, if you want to call it a particle. But consciousness is not matter. It's not really a particle. It's just a thought. So the universe is made out of thoughts. Oftentimes we physicists will say time is an illusion and space is an illusion. Well, the illusions are thoughts, aren't they? So if you look at it that way, we're living in a big cartoon, which we've created, the cartoon we wanted. People say, well, no, it's got to be real. I'm sitting in my chair. My chair's real. I'm really sitting in it. Well, your chair's just an electromagnetic field that resists the electromagnetic field of your backside. And so your backside won't go down through it. The two are resisting each other. But there's really nothing there where your chair is. It's just a bunch of information. It's more like a piece of software. You think it's hardware because you sit on it, but it's software. And there's really nothing there. But because of the way things electronically work, you can't fall through the chair.
All of this is thought.
Oh,
all
cool.
of material
That
reality.
sounds familiar.
Who's talking?
Nice.
I'm hearing the voice there. So the you can't fall through the chair. It's an illusion, but it's an illusion that's real to you based on your belief. So, but what is God? What is this creative force, this infinite intelligence? It's a very big thing. It's much bigger than that guy with the gray beard sitting on the cloud that you can ask for things. It's much bigger. When you get up in the morning, the sun comes up. You can't make it not come up. That's providence. That's the universe. That's infinite intelligence making the sun come up. Why does it come up? Well, we know that the solar system rotates, and we've measured a lot of stuff. But why is the sun there to begin with? We can't answer that question. We think we know everything in science. Oh, yes, we know everything. Sure. We can't even tell ourselves why the sun's there. We can't make a blade of grass. Yet we think we know everything. The universe, the conscious universe, does know everything. The conscious universe caused those stars to come into existence. The conscious universe caused the solar system to operate the way it does, holds everything in balance. That's a pretty powerful piece of consciousness, pretty powerful piece of information. We call it infinite intelligence. Infinite means without end, intelligence without end. To get a grasp of how big that infinite intelligence is, that creative force, that conscious universe, how big that is. You go out, maybe tonight you go out, if you look at the stars, if you're in the city, you might be able to see as many as 200 stars if you're in the city. But if you're out of town and out in the countryside, you'll see more like 2,000 stars. You'll be able to actually spot them if you wanted to sit and count them and take the whole night counting. But there's billions of stars. In our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, the one that our Earth and solar system lives in, there's 100 billion stars. And out there in the rest of the universe, which our Hubble telescope can show us great distances out there, there's another 100 billion galaxies. So if our galaxy has 100 billion stars, and each galaxy of the 100 billion galaxies that are out there has 100 billion stars, that's a pretty big number. I don't even know how to say that number. I probably have to look it up and get it said just the right way, scientific way of saying a number that big. That's how big the mind of infinite intelligence, or the mind of God, that's how big that is. Now, why do we avoid the word God? It's because of and use a term like infinite intelligence or universal consciousness. We use those words to describe this entity, this force, this creative life force. We avoid the use of the word God because many of us, like myself, come from fundamental religions and things where they have other ideas of who God is and what God is. And we don't want to confuse what we're talking about with that image of God as somebody who grants favors, because it's not that way. The universe doesn't grant favors. The universe is there, and the life force is there for you to take part in, but you can't demand of the universe. You can create, you're a co-creator, but you can't demand special favors. You can demand, you can work for success, you can create success, but you can't get something that no one else gets. We all get it. We all are creators in this universe. We're all co-creators. So it's available to all of us. And it's a huge thing. And we want to make that difference. So we don't use the word God so often. Now, over in England, they do. They say that in England, they say we recognize the fatherhood of God. Well, that's because they don't have quite the Catholic and fundamentalist background that we have to work against, that all that baggage that comes with the word God. So they can use that word a little more easily than we can in the United Kingdom. But here in the United States, we carefully, in 1893, we got together, the National Spiritualist Association got together and decided to use the word infinite intelligence. And that encompasses that whole force that runs the universe, that force that causes the birds to sing, that causes the fish to grow in the water that you catch, and the plants and everything. All of that. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there, but we don't even know what goes on, some of it. We haven't figured it out yet. All of that is within the mind of God, or the infinite intelligence, or the conscious universe. And the phrase I like to use most of all is the creative life force. I love that phrase when people go around and they say, well, God bless you. I don't want to say that. I want to say, may the force be with you. I want to sound like Yoda from Star Wars. May the force be with you. May that creative life force go with you, protect you, and bring you what you need. That providence, that source of which, from which you get everything. May that be with you. May the force be with you. Because when you believe the force is with you, you suddenly become creative. You can make things happen. It's real important when you're going to make things happen to not let your ego get in the way. When you make that happen for me and not for them. You know, we got our COVID-19, our first shot of the Pfizer. We get 2 shots. We got our first one a couple of days ago, and we didn't go down and say, "Oh, I got to have that. Need it now. Give me that. I'm essential." We didn't do any of that. We just sat at home, and one day, Kaiser sent us an email. Sent each one of us a separate email on our own email address, and said, "It's time for you to come and get your shot." We didn't have to do anything. We didn't have to register any place. And they sent us an email because we're over 65, and they finally had enough supply to handle the people who were over 65, who were not in the nursing home. We just let all of that happen the way it went, the way it's going to go, the way the universe is. And we went in and got our shot. It all worked perfectly. We didn't care if we didn't get the shot till the end of March. Whenever it came to be our turn, our time, we didn't say, "Oh, I'm so important. I got to go get my shot right now because I'm essential." Well, no, we just waited. We were patient, and the universe took care of it all. We had the most wonderful time. The people there, they were doing literally hundreds of us at a time, and they had it all figured out who was coming when, and they were on their schedule, and it was all working. And it's a very difficult thing they were doing. They were taking the Pfizer has to come out from the freezer and has to be thawed, and then it has to be used within 6 hours. And there's all this whole process they have to do, and they have to shake it just the right way 10 times, and then they stick it in your arm. And it's a whole process. It takes about 3 or 4 of them to get it ready for you. And they have to organize all these people, and then they have the people coming and coming in the door, and every 5 minutes they have another group, and they do this very organized. We were so pleased with what we saw. It sort of reminded us of World War II when the country got together and built things and made things happen. Very inspiring to go there. And then they watch you. They want to make sure you don't have an allergic reaction or a hypo, that you get nervous about it and you have some kind of a seizure. So they want to, it's a nervous thing that you might do with it. So they watch you for 20 minutes, and because you'll have that reaction within the first 20 minutes, or you won't have it at all. Most people don't have this reaction. 1 person in 1,000 will react that way, but they check to make sure that doesn't happen for you. And I look at how wonderful all this is, and everyone's worried about it and everything. And here this whole wonderful program comes together through no effort on our part, just providence, just coming and being handed to us, with us being patient and not letting ego get in the road and say, "I need this right now. I need this today. I'm going to do something about it." No, just wait. Send you an email. "Hey, you have to come in." "Okay, I'll come in." And that's how life is. If we trust the universe, if we trust infinite intelligence, if we trust providence, we'll always have breakfasts. We'll always have running water, flush toilets, all the wonderful things that make life livable. All those things will be here for us if we just trust. So when we talk about infinite intelligence, we're also talking about our own intelligence to rely on it. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't really see, how big that infinite intelligence is. It encompasses everything. All the laws of physics, all the laws of psychology and how people work together, how love works, how all of that works. is all decided by infinite intelligence. And each of us, and we do this when we do the demonstration of the phenomena of spiritualism, of talking to the other side. When we do that, we're demonstrating a thing called consciousness survival. We're demonstrating the fact that our individual consciousness continues after the change called death. And we're demonstrating that consciousness. And that consciousness, that individual consciousness that each of us is a part of the universal consciousness, the one big consciousness that is the whole, that runs the whole universe, that created the whole universe. We're a part of that, each of us. And it's hard to see that sometimes. And the way I look at it, the way I try to state it so that I can see it, is that each of us is like a grain of sand, where each individual consciousness is like a grain of sand on a great big beach that's just full of lots of grains of sand. That beach is a pretty smart place, and that's universal consciousness. We're all part of that beach. We each contribute our little piece to that beach. Without each grain of sand, there wouldn't be a beach. And so each of us brings our own little consciousness into that great big consciousness, which is God, if you want to use that word. I like to use the creative life force, the thing that causes, if you've ever watched a plant grow and the little thing springs up out of the ground and it just goes on up like that. So how does it do that? Where does it come from? The force that's making it do that, that's collecting the chemicals from the ground together and creating that plant and all those cells, that's the creative life force. That's what we're talking about, that powerful thing that overcomes entropy, that overcomes the wearing down of everything. It keeps growing. It's always growing up. And people say, well, we can have greenhouse gases. Well, greenhouse gases, what's the worst one? Carbon dioxide? Yeah, that's a pretty bad greenhouse gas. Guess what trees breathe? They breathe carbon dioxide. They need carbon dioxide to grow. They need that terrible greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, in order for them to grow. And what do they give back? After they've done their little photosynthesis with it, they hand back an oxygen. They take in a carbon dioxide and hand back an oxygen. They take the carbon and build a sugar out of it in the photosynthesis. So we need those trees, and those trees are provided for us. We didn't plant the trees. They're out there. They're provided for us by infinite intelligence. Way before we even knew what we were breathing. We thought we breathed air. We didn't know we were breathing oxygen. Way before we even knew that, the trees were there making the oxygen for us and handing it back to us. As fast as we breathe out carbon dioxide, they'd make oxygen. So you want to do something about global warming? Don't go to a rally somewhere. Go plant a tree. This year we've planted 6 trees. We have 6 of them in our little forest. We call it our forest. We have 6 trees now. And so go plant a tree and make your own oxygen. Overcome CO2 by putting a tree. That's what is much more effective than going to some rally and say, we're against greenhouse gas. Just plant a tree. It gets rid of this. Somebody gave $1 million prize if someone can come up with a system for getting rid of carbon dioxide. A tree. It's already there. Just plant a tree. This is our infinite intelligence. The mind, the consciousness that created this whole universe that's so synergistic, it takes care of everything. It has all these trees to get rid of the CO2. It has, and to give us back oxygen. It has all of this all figured out. We don't have to invent anything. We just have to plant some trees, a lot of trees. And people cut trees down and then they burn them, and then that makes some more gases, the greenhouse gases. Well, we just need to plant some trees. And then maybe if you want to add to get rid of the greenhouse gases, figure out ways to make houses out of concrete maybe, or silicone, or something else besides wood. Figure out other ways to, just to change things a little bit to make it work right. Then we won't be using up all the trees. And then we won't have so much greenhouse gas. On the other hand, you think about going to Mars, we want to make greenhouse gas on Mars so that they can have a greenhouse, so they can start growing things there again. That's how we're going to do with our atmosphere there, if you check into that. We're going to create greenhouse gas on Mars for about 40 years so that we can have an atmosphere. is a thing a good thing or a bad thing? So on Mars, I'm not against greenhouse gases. On the Earth, well, maybe. It depends. And there's always a solution. And infinite intelligence has that solution, which you can find if you go to a place of not resisting. Some people have little bumper stickers that says resist. Stop resisting. It's when you're trying to use your ego and your analytical mind to solve the world's problems that you get uptight and you want to fight and you want to go do things. And if you just back away and relax, you'll come to an area that I call anomalous cognition. You can call it intuition if you want. It's anomalous cognition. It's how you access information that you wouldn't otherwise have known. That's what we do as mediums. We access information we otherwise would not have known when we go in and find your grandma and we tell you about your grandma. We're connecting with her. We're going to a place that's not in our conscious mind, but we're picking up information that's out there that is in the consciousness, the huge, big, universal consciousness of which we are a part and which we have access to when we close down our analytical mind. When I turn off the scientist and become a very emotional person, I relate to the other side. And that's what you have to do. You have to turn off your analytical mind and go to the heart. And the heart is where I feel all the stuff from the other side. I always tell people I feel it. You say, you got their name? Yeah, I felt their name here in my heart. And that's how it works. Well, that infinite intelligence that gives us everything, gives us our life, gives us our food, gives us the rainwater, gives us the sunshine, gives us the intuition of what's going on the other side. All of that comes from this fantastic, huge, infinite, has no boundaries, infinite intelligence. So I'm gonna finish up right there. I'm just gonna say that's what we're talking about. And that's why we use the phraseology of infinite intelligence, or the one I like, the creative life force, universal intelligence. That's the names we describe for when we want to say God. And Dee Dee had one this morning. It was like infinite intelligence, but it was a little different. And I'm going to rewatch this so I can see what she said. That was beautiful. You named God instead of infinite intelligence. You had another phrase, but I've forgotten it already. That's what happens with me. Too many facts. So that's what I wanted you to know, how big this universal infinite intelligence is. And that's why we try not to use a word like God here in the United States. We try to use words that describe this bigger thing because people have a connotation, there's baggage with the word God. They have a connotation of it being a small thing, sort of like a king that go beg for things. And that's not what God is at all. God is this universal intelligence, this infinite intelligence. It's bigger than the universe. And they know there's no edge to the universe. You go out there, you get that direction or that direction, you just keep passing more and more galaxies and there's no end. We can't quite comprehend that. How can there be something with no end? Well, the simple answer is, okay, when you get to the end, what's beyond that? Not something we can answer. Not with our